Welcome. I'm so glad to be here with you today. I have a very, very special guest that I am excited to present to you and share with you. She's a dear soul sister and an incredibly powerful priestess. She is channeling in some amazing things right now. And one of them is a podcast that is here for the rising of the divine feminine within us. And I'm so happy to welcome Naia Leigh. Hi, Naia. Welcome.
Hi,
It's good
Eden.
to be with you. Hi,
Good
love.
to be with you and everybody else here. Thank you.
So Naia has released the She Temple podcast, which I'm honored to have been featured on. And we are going to be releasing that interview today. So we just wanted to give you a little heads up and share the link with you and share some of the downloads that came through this very powerful conversation. So Naia, before we go into kind of the content of that really incredible conversation we had, I'd just love to ask you a little bit more about your inspiration for this podcast and what She Temple really is for you.
Thank you for asking. It is the deepest part of my heart and soul and my greatest offering to the world, which is She Temple will be a larger platform, but the podcast is really a preliminary space to have these really important conversations that are so relevant today as we are facing so much uncertainty and distortion in the world. It's a place for women to come together and to share what they're working on, in this idea of the temple. What is the temple and what do we do inside of it? And it really is that sacred space for us to come together, to do the deeper work and to rise into our greatest potential as women so that we can offer our divine gifts to the world at this time.
Thank you so much for this incredibly important work. It is so needed now. I'm just aware of how the temples, the goddess temples, and the path of priestess, being an emissary and a divine embodiment of her, was pretty much eradicated from the face of the earth for millennia. And many of us in the West, we don't even understand this concept of temple or priestess. And just from your heart, if there's anything to give people who are maybe a little bit more mainstream, who don't really understand the distinction, like what's the difference between a priestess and a priest, or a church and a temple? Like, why is this needed? Mm-hmm. You can just say a little bit more from your awareness about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great question. Well, the priest and the priestess is really the vessel for the divine. So it's someone that is sovereign unto their own being and their own higher purpose, and asserting their will from that highest place in service to the greater good of all. Where a lot of our religious leaders, political leaders, and so on are still in some sort of distorted form of hierarchy or control, or even propagating fear in certain ways. Yeah. And what this is really, wanting to restore is the sacred within all of us and the freedom within all of us, so that we can return to this true connection with ourselves and our souls, and also with one another and the earth. And going back to your question about the temple, back at the beginning of human time, we didn't need temples because we were so connected. The earth was our temple. We were connected to the stars and the land and each other. We were just pure channels, able to channel that higher wisdom and act from there for the benefit of all beings. Now, as things began to change throughout time, we have needed those sacred spaces to gather and to do that work. To have that place of intention, to ground the codes that are coming through, as we always have access to this infinite wisdom. And so there have been priestess temples throughout time that have been eradicated and destroyed. For example, in the civilizations of Lemuria, Atlantis, Egypt, Avalon, and other times where we actually did have ornate, beautiful, sacred spaces, for women to come in together and practice their sacred work, and through that sacred work really step into their leadership.
So important to resurrect this awareness and this remembrance. And I know that with many of the women that I work with, they are having memories. They're having these incredible visions and memories that this is not dead. It's like it's in our DNA. It's in our psychic memory, and it's becoming more and more apparent to me that there's just no stopping this wave of these veils lifting and this dark spell being broken. And I know a big part of our interview in the podcast had to do with kind of illuminating and unveiling some of these spells that have been on us. And I know this is something you're passionate about, and that, before we recorded the interview, you were seeding that idea to me in my own awareness, like, let's talk about this. It's important now. So I'd like to hear more from you about how important this is for us as we awaken.
Yes, absolutely. You did a wonderful job in the interview, by the way, of really being that transmission of what these spells are and what the truth is, behind what we've all been conditioned to believe about ourselves and about existence and about our potential as a species. And so it's really, and this ties back to the work that I do with Boundless Method, it's really about identifying where are we not sovereign? Where are we imposing our own limitations on ourselves as a result of what we've inherited from culture and from our ancestry? That just isn't true. And also just doesn't feel good, because, when we're not operating from our greatest truth, it feels awful. And that's where we can get into fear and dissociation and addiction and, projecting or wounding in our relationships and having, really challenging relationships. Or, I believe one of our most just deepest pains is not being able to live our purpose in this life. And that itself can create physical pain. It can create physical dis-ease. It can create projecting onto our partners our unhappiness, thinking it's coming from them or they should make us happy. So it's it's really, I see She Temple, but in the greater She Temple is just a representation of the temple, which, our bodies are meant to be temples. We are meant to be, with holding the code of the sisterhood temple with one another, whether that's just gathering with one other person or it's spending time in nature. But it's really, really wonderful to create as you hold this for so many women, and I'm saying wisdom, you're holding the wisdom for so many women in these ceremonies to activate this remembrance and to step into our greatest potential and to see one another and midwife one another through that process.
Yeah, that's my greatest joy in this lifetime. I'm so honored to be able to do this work and to have found my purpose. Little did I know back in the day when I thought I was meant to be a rock star. It was so egoic. Now my heart led me down this path of remembrance. And there's something that's kind of bubbling up for me because of how close we are and how we talk about what's going on in our own lives and in our clients and initiates' lives. And it has to do with the masculine and the massive amount of healing that's going on. And how does She Temple and the work that you're assisting and supporting and illuminating for women then ripple into the collective to support our lovers, our brothers, our fathers, our male friends? Like, what are you seeing right now with regards to the healing and holding for all of us, for all of humanity?
I'm so glad you brought this up because it's so deeply relevant. A lot of people want to say it's all about, and this is true, it's all about the balance and, men and women coming together. And so they want to sort of, disregard the power of, focusing on the feminine or focusing on the masculine, or women gathering together. But the key here is that actually doing that and doing that work together, it allows us to release these distortions that do affect our relationships. So I'll just give a couple examples that I work with in my own work and have really worked on in my own personal process. So for example, most women that have experienced some type of, sexual violation or something that was unwanted, that then, had them sort of stop feeling safe in their bodies, stop feeling safe in their beauty or their sexuality, or cause them to dissociate and give their sexuality freely. And, or, in, say, maybe they've found really amazing men to be in partnership, or even women that have a masculine energy, they can be projecting that feeling of unsafety on that person, when actually the template is just in their own body. It's from that past trauma. And so because of what we're holding in our bodies, we can create a reality that we're believing is true, but it's not really true. And so doing this deep inner work can restore, and sexuality is just one example, but can really restore the trust for the masculine. And so that can improve all of our relationships. Another example I'll give, actually, it's from a session with a client yesterday. And that is that many of us have been conditioned through religious beliefs that really, condition us to believe that the feminine is inferior and that almost everything about her is a sin. And whether it's her, her wildness, her sexuality, her beauty, even, just sharing that beauty in the world. Even it can she also had a program of not feeling like she was worthy to even spend money on herself or have nice things. And in her own self, she was really viewing the masculine energy, as she was taught, as this hierarchical, man with a beard in the sky that was looking down at her saying, if you don't do this, 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 and this, and this, you're going to hell. And the only way that you can access me is through another person, say a priest. And so, at the beginning of the session, she's like, I don't really need to work on my relationship with the masculine. I said, well, let's ask your body. And, I start, bringing her into her body and asking questions. And what her body was saying was she was totally withholding from her husband. She was withholding her love, her trust, her sexuality, and she was fully believing she was inferior because her father was a priest, and she was so conditioned that the feminine is inferior to the masculine. So she wasn't speaking her truth or setting her boundaries. So the more that we can come together and shed these distortions, the more we can step into who we really are, and the better that our relationships become in community and in our personal relationships.
So beautiful. I know that in the interview we touch upon this exact distortion, and I think I call it a dark spell or a program that we've been imprinted with from the very beginning. And as you said, even ancestrally and collectively, just this eradication of the feminine from history, from writing, from religion in the West, and especially the Christian, Judaic, Western colonialized world. It's time to really lift the veil on that completely and take that right position of balance and harmony with the men. Yes, and to recognize the body is the temple, the heart is the gateway, that we are she. And I'm just so thrilled to share you with my community. And if there's anything else that you want to speak about the particular podcast, or anything else that you feel is relevant to leave them with as just a gift from your heart today, I'd love to offer them that.
Thank you. think what I'd like to offer more than anything is just that more is possible, and it's our birthright, you know, to experience joy in this life and deep, profound connection with our sisters, and even, you know, pleasure in our bodies as a conduit to knowing ourselves better, and experience the ecstasy of this life that is here now, embodied in form and not up and out. And that we are meant to be allies for one another on that journey. And the only other thing I'll say is that I also have She Temple Facebook group, so that, you know, anything that we talk about in the podcast, we can come together as a community and continue those conversations.
That's so wonderful, Naia. Thank you for inviting everybody, and I'll be sure to join too. I'd love to stay in this amazing temple and just serve and support in any way possible. I am such a big yes for this work, and resurrecting the temples within and the temples all around on earth, and for sisters to rise together. So thank you so much for your beautiful soul mission and purpose. And I love you so much.
Likewise, I love you too. And I want to just add, if you can, stay for the song transmission that Eden brought through at the very end of that podcast. So powerful, and you brought through these amazing affirmations. So relax and enjoy and receive.
Thank you, Naia. Have a beautiful day.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Blessings and love.